This is what some of us one day will face. I won't use profanity, but I think profanity is probably due. This sort of thing probably occurs dozens of times every year across Canada, and certainly that many times across the U.S. There's little respect for the homeowner. Okay. Okay, let's give this one a shot, a try. Good evening. This podcast is a light discussion on the topic of home invasion. So I have to throw in a legal disclaimer as best I can. I did speak with a lawyer. In any case, this podcast represents a best effort attempt to discuss events, public statements, and issues of public interest using information that has been researched, reviewed, and verified to the highest standard that I can find. In any case, I've done the best I can to ensure accuracy, but mistakes, omissions, misunderstandings can occur. I've done my best. Nothing in this podcast is presented as absolute fact, and listeners, the few of you who are there, which are very, very few, are encouraged to verify any information independently if you are so inclined. This podcast does not accuse, blame, target, or intentionally make an unjust focus on any individual, organization, or institution. Any references to public figures, public officials, or public statements are made solely for the purpose of commentary, analysis, and discussion on matters of public interest, which is protected under the Charter as protected expression. No harm, malice, or ill intent is directed towards any person or group. Opinions expressed in this podcast are personal opinions only, based on the information available at this time. The podcast does not provide legal advice, does not instruct listeners on how to act in dangerous situations, and does not promote or encourage violence, confrontation, or unlawful behavior in any content. I've created the content in good faith with the sole intention of contributing to public understanding, public dialogue, and informed discussion. If any individual or organization believes a statement has been made in error, let me know and I will make the corrections as best I am able. So, let me have a look here. I have a number of valuable inserts which I wanted to include. I wanted to include the links, the URLs, and the video and audio, which I understand I'm not able to do without permission. I didn't have the time. And I understand some of these permissions involve financial compensation to the source. So, unfortunately, I came across a big problem in a program called OBS, and I'm unable at this time to include the URLs and links and get them on the screen. I can't get a word wrap option in OBS. So next podcast, and there will be a number 5 for the few who watch, I will try to get a word wrap in another program, even if I have to change from OBS. In any case, there's a number of commentaries out there from Premier Ford, which are absolutely phenomenal. And I have been able to transcribe some of his comments as public domain, which I'm able to do. And the police chief of York has some wonderful comments on home invasion, which are on CTV News. And the one from Doug Ford is on CTV News, so if you do a search, you will find them. Let's have a look. A third commentary on CTV News from the chief, York Regional Police Chief. And another one from www.yrp.ca, which I assume is yorkregionalpolice.ca, which is fairly good. And there's another one on CTV News from the police chief on Doug Ford commenting on the home invasion in Lindsay. And there's another, I just want to bring this to your attention. There's another on City TV News from the Kawartha Lakes police chief and Doug Ford commenting on his comments. Okay, sorry about that. In any case, okay, this is a transcript from something Doug Ford said in public. So here we go. The quote starts, "Congratulations." This is not me speaking, it's this Premier Ford, but he says it perfectly. Quote, "Congratulations. Yeah, I'm glad you shot the guy. Teaches the rest of these robbers, encourages everyone out there that's a legal gun owner. Someone's going to come in and try to kill you and kill your family. Remember, it was just last week, Jamie." And Jamie is a person, I believe, in the news media. I believe that. "A guy got shot because he was trying to protect his kids. Well, you know, these guys, they need to be shot as far as I'm concerned. You're coming through the front door to hurt your family. I'll never forget the one family that the man was protecting his 4-year-old kid and his child. I should say there's 3 other children and his wife, and they assassinated him right in front of his kids. Like these ruthless, like they need to rot in jail for the rest of their lives. Congratulations for shooting this guy. I should have shot him a couple more times as far as I'm concerned. And everyone should be out there, legal gun owners. And by the way, the federal government, they're spending so much time on going after legal, law-abiding gun owners that safely store their guns, safely store their ammunition. They are hunters, they're sport shooters. I have an idea. Rather than wasting hundreds of millions of dollars on going after legal gun owners, why don't you spend that hundreds of millions of dollars going after the bad guys? They always want to protect the bad guys. The judges always, want to protect Charter of Rights. How about the Charter of Rights of the people to keep them safe rather than always protecting these criminals? I'm just sick and tired of them. I can tell you folks, I talk to a lot of people. I get 1,000 calls. I'm not exaggerating. 1,000 calls and messages a day. People are done with this. They're done with all of these crazy protesters and nasty people and breaking into homes and stealing cars. We all grew up here. Did we experience this 10 years ago? No, we never experienced this. People in Toronto never experienced this. I'm guessing about 5 years ago, you know, people were just so brazen because we have some great judges. But we have some really weak-kneed judges letting these criminals out on bail, not once, not twice, 4 or 5 times, just to go, okay, Johnny, get out there and break into the next house. They're violent criminals, and we're going to hold them to account. And thank you for getting me going, Jamie, because the truth, what I'm saying, the vast majority of the people are thinking in the province. I can assure you of that. End quote. That is an exact quote. It's not me speaking, it's Premier Ford. And I agree with him 100%. This has got to stop. We've got to bring this to a close. Okay, let's see. I want to give a shout out to somebody that everyone should be watching. His name is Ian Runkles, Runkles. He's got videos out there. He's a lawyer, exceptional, absolutely exceptional. And he does speak about home invasion. I'm not even going to begin to repeat what he has to say. His podcasts are absolutely phenomenal. So if anyone has the time and the interest, log on to Ian, Ianrunkles. And by the way, I've never met Mr. Runkles. He's never met me. I'm just telling you, he's really, really good. In any case, okay. Let's see. The Kawartha police chief defends. Give me a second. There's a link from Premier Ford about the Kawartha Lakes Police, and they defend their decision to charge a homeowner in the alleged assault of an intruder. You can find this on Google Chrome under 14-24-42 MP4. In any case, here's the exact transcript from Premier Ford. Quote, "Everyone hear about the story in Lindsay? So this criminal that's hunted, it came across as hunted by the police, breaks into this guy's house. This guy gives him a beating, and the guy gets charged." That's the homeowner. And continue with the quote, "The other guy gets charged, but something is broken. I know someone breaks into my house or someone else's, you're gonna fight for your life. This guy has a weapon. You're gonna use any force you possibly can to protect your family. Violent violence, and breaking into people's homes, putting guns." Dead? Okay. And guess what? Some bleeding heart judge, little Johnny, he didn't have a good upbringing, so we're going to let him out on bail 5 more times because he's on his 5th. You know, being let out on bail 5 times just to go do the same thing next day. I'll tell you one thing. I get more calls than anyone in the country. People are done with this. They're absolutely done. They're finished. You should be able to protect your family when someone's going in there to harm your family and your kids. You should use all resources you possibly can to protect your family. And maybe these criminals will think twice about walking into someone's home. End quote. Now, on the same news feed, a City TV News general host states, and this is another exact quote, but it doesn't matter about the person who said it. "The case of an assault against an alleged home intruder that sparked a nationwide dialogue over homeowners' rights to defend themselves will not be proceeding to court. That's because it was back on August 18th when a resident of an apartment says he woke up, find another man inside his Lindsay home. There was allegedly an altercation, and the intruder, suffered serious life-threatening injuries. The homeowner, a 44-year-old man from Lindsay, was charged with aggravated assault. After reviewing the case and requirements for self-defense under the criminal code, the Crown now says there is no longer reasonable prospect of conviction." Isn't that terrible? "And the charges have been dropped." Premier Doug weighed in at the time, saying, "You should be able to protect your family," and today he welcomed the court's decision. This is what we're talking about, potentially home invasion. I have to refrain from using profanity, but look what's going on here. And it seems often that the homeowner is the one who's charged if he or she defends themselves. I know it's complicated, but it seems that someone breaking into your home, as in this video, they almost have more rights than we do. Doesn't seem right. So let's talk a little bit more about home invasion. It's something that generally sits in the public imagination, sits in people's minds, but I don't think a lot of people like to think about it. But I'm sure they do worry about it. I want to set the tone on this, and it's not an episode about fear. It's not about anger. It's not about politics. And it's certainly not about telling anyone what they should or should not do. It's just an issue that we need to talk about in terms of legalities, because behind every headline relating to home invasion, behind every police report, behind every statistic, there's a family, a mom, a dad, children, pets, potential other family members who have lived through this, and it's going to stay with them potentially for the rest of their lives. So let's talk about what a home invasion, or why it's not like other crimes. It's not about a stolen bicycle. It's not about a smashed car window. It's not even a robbery in a public place. Home invasion is a violent of the one space in the world that a person is supposed to feel safe. It crosses the boundary that is emotional, psychological, and deeply human. Even when there's no physical injury, the emotional impact can be profound. People say, well, at least no one was hurt. But it's not quite true. Being terrified in your own home is a form of harm, and the effects can linger a long time after the intruders are gone. So today we're going to look at some of the legalities of home invasion, and see if we can make some sense of things. So the best I can determine is that a crime under the title of home invasion does not exist. The crime or the act of home invasion falls under break and enter, under Section 348(1) of the Criminal Code of Canada. And break and enter occurs, just for clarity, when a person breaks and enters a place with intent to commit an indictable offense, and breaks and enters and actually commits an indictable offense, or breaks out after committing an indictable offense or entering with intent. Okay? The key legal points to break and enter: break does not require smashing anything or breaking anything. It doesn't require opening an unlocked door or window. That's what counts. Enter means any part of the body crosses the threshold with an intent to commit any indictable offense. Theft, assault, mischief, etc. is enough. It applies to homes, businesses, vehicles, trailers, and certain enclosures. The penalties for break and enter into a dwelling house, my understanding is the maximum penalty is life imprisonment. Break and enter into a non-dwelling house, up to 10 years. Okay, home invasion. Canada today, from my research, doesn't have a standalone home invasion offense. Instead, the Crown charges break and enter into a dwelling which already carries a maximum of life, and then stacks on the violent offenses that may have occurred inside, such as aggravated assault, sexual assault, forcible confinement, robbery, extortion, weapons offenses, even attempted murder. Each of these potentially carry maximums ranging from 10 years to life. In the most violent cases, the sentencing exposure is effectively decades, and if someone dies, it becomes a life sentence. And now let's take a look at the legal definition of home invasion, which there isn't any. How about that one? There isn't one. So all of this activity which we read about under the Criminal Code of Canada, it doesn't exist per se. We're talking about break and enter. Isn't that wonderful? The reason home invasion is so important, and it seems to some degree to be neglected under the criminal code, I mean, it's not clearly defined, home invasion is becoming more common, and the stories related to this activity have been more shocking, more confusing, more emotionally charged. What I believe is a really sore point is we've seen cases where homeowners confront intruders. They fight back. People are injured. Sometimes people are killed. And in the aftermath, you'll love this one, who's charged? The homeowner for defending his or her property and their family, which is, I don't know, makes no sense to me. I want to bring to light the term home invasion. I don't want to dwell on this too much longer, is that the term does not exist anywhere in Canadian law, not that I can find. Not in the Criminal Code of Canada. Not once. It's not a charge. It's not an offense per se. It's not defined, not that I can find. And yet police services across the country use it constantly. They use it in press releases. They use it in media briefings. They use the words home invasion. They use it when they want to reassure the public or alarm the public or shape the narrative around an incident. And here's the problem. When police use the term that has no legal definition, they're effectively creating their own category of crime. I guess, forget the I guess. They're doing the best they can. And you know the old adage, when you're in trouble, who you're going to call? A criminal or the police? Well, obviously the answer is. But do we not live in society bound by laws? And if people and property are being hurt by home invasion, should the law not reflect something in text that's clearly defined? I think we should, or it should. In any case, it's not a small thing. Home invasion is real. Is break and enter real? Absolutely. But home invasion is a whole different level, a different category, different thought. And from my position as a non-lawyer, I think it just makes sense that this is an area that needs to be redefined and act and put into the Criminal Code of Canada. It's really that important. And maybe a greater question is, the police do have discretion. There's no doubt they have discretion. But do we want the laws of Canada being created and defined by our police departments? I don't think we do. I think we need text and clearly defined laws which define how the police and the courts deal with home invasions. If there's not a clear definition of what home invasion is, the law is supposed to be a standard. Then the language used to describe crime should match the law. It should not drift away from it, not improvise around it, not create new categories on the fly. If we want a justice system that is transparent, predictable, and accountable, then the terminology used by police should be anchored in the criminal code, not floating somewhere above it, not left up to the discretion of a constable or sergeant doing their very best. I get it. But this is something that defines Canada, and we need to have our lawyers and lawmakers step up to the plate and create criminal code act that reflects home invasion. Now, I'm not going to say which police chief said this, but it's been recorded. One of the police chiefs said, "Do not confront intruders. Do not defend yourself. Comply." Well, I don't know. It almost sounds like, I know the words are meant to be different than how they were spoken. I understand that, and I'm sure everyone else does as well. But when it comes from the police chief, it has more meaning. And when a police chief is basically, his words are, don't confront these criminals, what are you supposed to do? Be hypothetical. You're a homeowner, a standard, typical homeowner. There's a husband and a wife and, say, a couple of kids. Someone's breaking into your house in the middle of the night. You're half asleep. Say it's 2 a.m, and someone breaks in. You're not at your best. Most of us wouldn't be at our best at that time. And I would think it's pretty much human that, considering who's in the house, you're going to do whatever you can to stop the aggression. And to be told or have a police chief suggest that you should avoid confrontation, I understand. And a further comment was, when it comes to defending property, materials, items can be replaced, but lives cannot. Of course, that's the truth. But if someone's breaking into your home at any time, but more so during the dark hours, I'm not sure that they're coming in and saying, "Could I have your TV or your stereo, or give me a few dollars of cash?" I expect they're potentially looking for more, and I'm not sure you're going to stand there and say, "Just go ahead and take it." I understand what the police chief was saying. It just seems it could have been a little better thought out. As a follow-up, this police chief stated, "It was suggested as a tactic in the hopes of preserving lives should citizens be confronted with an armed intruder." And I do get it, and I'm sure everybody out there does as well. Most of us aren't equipped to defend ourselves against an armed intruder. Even if you're a legal firearms owner, you're supposed to have, my understanding is you're supposed to have trigger lock on that firearm. The firearm itself is supposed to be in a secure location, and any rounds are supposed to be kept in a different location, secured. So if someone's breaking into your house, I don't know how many of us would have the time to open up multiple lockers and open up trigger locks and then potentially defend yourself. I don't think that's really reasonable for most people. In any case, I understand what the police chief's saying. His intent was good. I just don't think it was stated with enough thought. And this police chief goes on to say, "If we're going to rely on our community members to take matters into their own hands to solve this problem," which it was about home invasion, we'll have all failed our community. Again, I get it. But what can I say? I think we all understand what the chief was trying to say. Going a step further, politicians, and I think this is all in the public domain. I'm not going to say any names, but I think we all have heard some politicians are saying the opposite to what the police chief's saying. Politicians are saying, defend your family. The system is broken. And I do have all of the links, which I can't post. I wasn't able to do it. OBS wouldn't let me. In any case, so for a moment, let's talk about what real people do when their families are in danger in a home invasion scenario, more or less. So let me be clear. This is my opinion, and it's based on conversations with a number of people I know, friends and family, and other ordinary neighbors. I fully understand what people say in private is totally different from what they say publicly. I understand that opinions evolve, but I can say this with confidence. I don't know a mother, father, an older sibling who wouldn't do anything to protect their family if a home invasion were to occur. And that's not bravado. It's human biology. Home invasion is not a situation where people sit down and calmly weigh pros and cons. Nobody's writing a doctoral dissertation with a firearm pointed at their head. Nobody is engaging in philosophical debate while a spouse or child is being assaulted or threatened in another room. In a real home invasion scenario where people are present, where danger is potentially imminent, where the threat is inside the home, the human response is instinctive, it's primal, it's protective, it's action. The goal is simple. I think anyone with a normal mental aptitude would agree. Stop the harm, stop the assault, stop the threat. This is not a thinking time. It's not time to sit down and start analyzing the situation. Not with firearms involved, not with potentially 3 or 4 men or just leave it, 3 or 4 people coming into your home. I think most of us would not be able to defend ourselves. Most of us. So this is not a time for discussion. It's a time that you have to react. And that instinct, the instinct to protect your family, is not immoral. It's not illegal. Well, maybe it is today. It's not unusual. It's universal. And this is where the messaging from police becomes difficult to interpret. When officials tell the public to comply, to step aside, to let intruders take material items, that advice may make sense in a burglary where nobody is home, but in a home invasion where people are there, where violence is possible, where the stakes potentially are life and death, the idea that offenders only want property doesn't match the reality of these crimes. It doesn't. This advice told to the public from our police officials to comply and step aside appears to benefit the intruders, the criminals, more than it does support the legal homeowner. Families do not have the luxury of assuming the best intentions of people who have forcibly entered their homes. And that's pretty much the point. Not to criticize law enforcement, not to encourage confrontation, but to acknowledge a simple truth. In a real home invasion, human beings act to protect the people they love. It's not a political statement. It's not a legal argument. It's not a call to action. This is a description of human behavior under extreme threat. And any public safety messaging that ignores that reality or blurs the line between burglary and home invasion risks confusing the very people it's meant to protect. I have all of the URLs for quotes that I'm saying, but because I wasn't able to post them for you to potentially review or link to, I'm just going to be a little bit more nebulous and say This is a post from, or a commentary from CTV News, and you probably know who it was, but it doesn't matter. This wonderful politician who has gained my respect, he's the man. He said, "Enough is enough. Ottawa's weak stance on crime, the justice system is broken." He said the man who died was protecting his family. I think he speaks for almost all of us. He's actually great. But please do a little tiny bit of research if you have the time. You can find all of these links and all these audio and video clips online. They're all there. You just have to do a little search. And then there was a gentleman charged in Kawartha Lakes. His home was broken into, and without going into a lot of particulars, the intruder and the homeowner were charged. How do you like that one? Again, you can find the links and the exact quotes, but one quote is, "The law requires that any defensive action be proportionate to the threat faced." Well, okay, I guess that makes sense. If someone's breaking in to take your stereo, you can't kill them. But then that's a judgment call. And in the dark hours of the night, I don't think anybody is going to be sitting and thinking in those terms. I really don't. And to have a legal citizen, I don't even know what that means, a legal citizen in Canada, a homeowner paying taxes, doing the best they can, working a 40-hour crummy job, and have someone break into their home and you can't defend yourself and our police force charge them? I don't know. It just doesn't make any sense. Another person said, "While individuals have the right to defend themselves and their property under Canadian law, the right to do so is not unlimited." Yeah, okay. I get it. But I don't know. I don't know where it all goes to. It just becomes more muddied and more obscure. Imagine this scenario. You're broken into, your home's broken into. The perpetrator is arrested, I'm assuming. And there the homeowner is in his pajamas and he gets arrested. Imagine. That is, to some extent, what happens in a home invasion. I don't know. I think the video kind of says it all. It's just something is wrong. So what actually happens after a home invasion? What often happens is that family members are arrested, jailed, handcuffs. It's insanity. The Supreme Court of Canada and provincial policing standards explicitly recognize that police have discretion in how they lay charges. The Criminal Code defines offenses, but officers decide which charges to lay based on their judgment, and that discretion can lead to unequal outcomes. I think it can lead to a lot of unequal outcomes if we push the envelope. And I won't get too detailed, but in a Supreme Court case, R versus Beaudry 2007, the Supreme Court of Canada explicitly stated that police have discretion in deciding whether to lay charges. The Supreme Court held that police officers have a necessary discretion, in quotes, in deciding whether to enforce the law, including whether to lay charges. The court explained that police are not required to lay a charge every time an offense appears or to have been committed. They must use judgment, context, and professional discretion. This is not interpretation. It's not interpretation. This is the Supreme Court's own reasoning. In another case, R versus Reagan, 2002, the court noted that police have broad discretion in investigation and the charging process. That was part of a discussion about abuse of process and a separation of roles between police and the Crown prosecutors. So, if there is case history, and the courts have stated, and apparently stated this with explicitness, that the police do have discretion as to what charges, if any, should be laid, why does it appear that the homeowner is the victim? It's strange. So let's speak momentarily about the legal aftermath of a home invasion. Because when the police arrive, the homeowner expects clarity. They expect reassurance. They expect to be treated as the victim. But what often happens, not always, but often happens, is something that feels deeply counterintuitive, even surreal. And I believe, as in the case up in Kawartha Lakes, it drives the public crazy, and I understand why. So under this scenario, the police begin to assess the scene. They look at injuries, they look at weapons, they look at damage, they look at blood, they look at the homeowner. And then in some cases, not always, some cases, they do something that shocks everyone and makes Canadians, even people outside of Canada, wonder. They charge the homeowner. Not always, not in every case, but often enough that it's become a pattern people talk about quietly, nervously, and with a kind of disbelief. And why the police, let's talk about why police charge the homeowner. Again, you can understand, we're not against the police, but we want clarity, and we want the police to act the same in every instant. We don't want preferential treatment given to someone they know, or some person with affluence, or somebody who's extremely wealthy, or someone who has notoriety. Treat everyone the same under the same circumstances. So why the police charge the homeowner? Let's be clear. We're not against the police. Police officers are not malicious. I believe that. They're not trying to punish victims. I believe that. They're not trying to reward intruders. I hope they aren't. They're following a procedure. And the procedure in many jurisdictions is if there's uncertainty, if there's injury, if there's force used, charges are laid, and I believe they take the attitude, let the court sort it out. This is not speculation. It's not opinion. It's not an exaggeration. This is how the system was designed. Police are trained to secure the scene, to preserve evidence, avoid making legal judgments, even though the courts have said they do have discretionary options, and they lay charges when there's any doubt. And they let the Crown attorneys decide what to do next. In other words, police charge, lawyers clarify, courts decide. And the homeowner, the person who is terrified in their own home because the one who must now defend themselves. So let's speak a little bit further, and then we'll move on to some options. The emotional insanity of punishing the victim, which seems to occur more often than it should. Imagine being the father in the hallway in your own house. Imagine the fear, imagine the adrenaline, imagine the instinct to protect your family. Now imagine that after surviving that moment, after calling the police for help, after doing everything you thought was right, you were the one placed in handcuffs. You were the one questioned. You're the one photographed. You're the one fingerprinted. You're the one charged. Meanwhile, the intruders, the ones who caused the fear and the problems, appear to potentially walk away with fewer consequences. Okay, that might be a slight exaggeration, but it sure as heck feels wrong to charge the homeowner. In any case, to ordinary people, this feels like insanity. And it does. How could it not? It feels like the system is punishing the victim and protecting the perpetrators. And this is where the emotional wound deepens. Because homeowners is not just dealing with fear anymore. They're dealing with humiliation, confusion, anger, profound sense of betrayal. Okay, so let's move on to something else. Let's talk about the winners in all of this. And yeah, there really are winners. Because as most people know, gravity doesn't exist. The world turns on money. Everything turns on money. If you don't have financial assets, you're toast in this world. You don't have to agree with me. And philosophers and psychology majors will disagree. But it sure makes life easier if you have resources. So who wins in this case? Home invasion, police come in, perpetrators charged, the homeowners charged. Who wins? Well, everyone should know. It begins with L. The lawyers. The lawyers all win. Once charges are laid, even if they're later dropped, the homeowner is forced into a legal process, and that legal process can cost tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars, and potentially more. This is not theoretical. It's not a game. It's not hypothetical. This is real life experience that people have to face. And they didn't do anything. Someone broke into their home, yet they have to spend their resources to defend themselves. And if they win, I'm assuming they're going to win, who compensates them? Good rhetorical question. In any case, this is a real experience. Many families who have been through the home invasion activity and arrested by the police. Legal fees accumulate quickly. There's consultation, evidence reviews, expert witnesses, court appearances, motions, delays, negotiations. Who pays for it all? The homeowner. What did the homeowner do? Not a thing. Nothing. So what it all works out to? Their savings disappear. Retirement plans evaporate. Mortgages are refinanced, if they're able to get refinanced. Families go into debt just to defend the person who was already the victim. And people ask with complete sincerity, why are we punishing the homeowner? Why is the victim the one paying the highest price? Let's assume that the perpetrator is found guilty. He or she, whatever, is incarcerated. Everything's supplied for them. I'm not saying incarceration's good. I'm just saying they get their food, their bedding, their heat, their water, showers. They get everything provided to them. Again, I'm not saying that's ideal. I'm just saying when the homeowners, they have to relinquish potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars in assets to defend themselves, and hopefully the case against them is withdrawn. So in terms of logic versus the human experience, from the system's perspective, the logic is simple. Police are not judges. Police are not juries. Police are not legal analysts. Police lay charges when there's uncertainty. The courts decide what actually happens, but from the homeowner's perspective, the logic feels wild. I believe a lot of the conflict arises between what some politicians say and some police departments say. Police departments say avoid confrontation. Property is replaceable, lives aren't. Perfectly reasonable. But on the same hand, some politicians are saying the laws are not appropriate and the police are not acting what seems to be logical, charging the homeowner. So there's a real debate, and it's valuable. So I really want to move on from this part of the commentary, but I'm going to close this part by saying the police are leaving homeowners with no clear practical guidance because the criminal code says, I believe I'm accurate, you may defend yourself, but only with reasonable force. And reasonable is decided after the fact by prosecutors, judges, and juries, not by the police, not by you, not in the moment. So the homeowner is left in a total nebulous environment. They don't know to deal with instinct, fear, split-second decisions. They have zero clarity under the moment, and potentially in the back of their minds are thinking, no matter what I'm doing, I'm going to be charged, and I'm going to end up losing possibly $100,000 or many $100,000 in legal fees to defend myself. So it's a mess. Now, looking at a different aspect of home invasion, the Americans do it totally differently, and it's really interesting. And I don't want to overstate things, but I'll address them as best I can. In the U.S., some of the states have a doctrine called the castle law. And without being overly aggressive, the castle law, I've accumulated this, and I'm sorry, I have to read some of it. Castle doctrine is a legal principle in the U.S. that allows a person to use force, including deadly force, against an intruder inside their home without a duty to retreat, as long as they reasonably believe they face imminent danger of death or serious harm. It's not one single federal law. Every state has its own version, some broad, some narrow. What the castle law doctrine generally allows, you have no duty to retreat in your home. You don't have to try to escape from your home before defending yourself. This is the core of the doctrine. Your home is your castle. You're allowed to defend yourself and the people inside your home. It's legal. The use of second point, use of deadly force can be justified under the castle doctrine. Deadly force may be justified if you reasonably believe the intruder possesses imminent threat or death or serious bodily harm to you or anyone in that home. It applies to occupied spaces. In other words, someone has to be in the home. In many states, the doctrine applies not only to homes, but also to occupied vehicles. Sometimes workplaces. It varies by each state. They may provide, the castle law may provide criminal and civil protection. Some states provide criminal immunity and civil immunity, protection from wrongful death lawsuits. Others only provide criminal protection. But what the castle doctrine does not automatically do is not a blank check. You still must show a reasonable belief that imminent danger may occur. If the intruder is unarmed, fleeing, or not threatening, the doctrine may not protect the occupant. It is not applied equally to every state. Every state set up their own laws, and they may have a castle law, they may not have one. But in the majority of states that have a castle doctrine, that allows for deadly force against almost any unlawful entry. You still carry the burden of proof, And having lived in the States for a number of years and knowing a number of extremely wealthy people down there, I can't tell you what I've been told, but I can tell you that the castle law is, every homeowner in the States knows what the castle law is. They know. And what do they say? There's more handguns in the States than there are blades of grass. That's kind of true. So if someone's going into your home in the States where the castle doctrine is in effect, it's going to be a war. So simply to reiterate, the castle doctrine in the U.S. means if someone unlawfully enters your occupied home, you reasonably believe that they pose imminent danger to you or to anyone in that home, you may use force, including deadly force, without retreating. You don't have to retreat. And of course, this all depends on each state. So let's just briefly speak about the expenses tied to the police charging a homeowner who is involved in a home invasion. These are all approximate, of course. They're only meant to make you think, but we all know that lawyers don't work for nothing. They don't. In any case, legal fees for a serious charge can easily reach $150,000 to $500,000 for a full defense. Maybe more, maybe less. I don't know. But it's certainly not going to be for a coffee and a donut. If there's expert witnesses, appeals, extended proceedings are involved, perhaps the legal fees exceed $1 million. There's no public funding for the middle-class homeowner. Legal aid is not available for most people with jobs, mortgages, or assets. So the homeowner is faced to choose between options. How do they come up with the money to pay the lawyers? Remortgaging the house, draining their savings, selling assets, going to debt, asking family members for help. And this is all going on before they even reach the court. The breadwinner, the breadwinner may be jailed pre-trial. The homeowner's denied bail or cannot meet bail conditions. They may sit in jail. They may sit in jail for months awaiting trial. Again, I'm not a lawyer. If you were to watch Mr. Runkle's videos, he's great. I think he's what most commentators would aspire to be like him. He's a great speaker, knowledgeable as heck. He's just really, really good. In any case, there's a lot of consequences to this. Loss of employment. Some employers, if one of their staff is charged in a home invasion, they may lose their job. They may, even if they win, their name is not the same as it was. There's an implication of wrongdoing. Mortgage default. If the breadwinner is incarcerated, is there some way of assuring that mortgage payments are made? It's a mess. And even if the person is acquitted, are the ultimate ends to all this. The home may be lost. The mortgage lenders may cut off their support. Their credit line of credit their credit stature is lost. It's a mess. And what did they do wrong? Nothing. They protected their home and their family. So what's the hard conclusion? In Canada today, a homeowner who defends their family during a home invasion can end up in a worse position than the criminals who broke in. Yeah, okay, it's an exaggeration, but it can be a mess. It's not an exaggeration, really. It's not an emotion. This is a system as it currently functions. Here's the blunt truth. defend your family, you may be charged. You probably will be charged. Probably. You'll be charged with assault, manslaughter, murder. All of those charges are potentially on the table. And all you are doing is protecting the people in your home and yourself. Once charged, you potentially face financial ruin. It's possible. Legal fees hit hundreds of thousands of dollars or more. Even if you win, do you lose? I think there's a lot of examples of people out there who've been charged and acquitted, and the system will not accept them back. And I think a major consideration is that even if a homeowner is charged and found not guilty, and let's just say they spend $150,000 on their defense, the system's not going to repay them. So it's like double jeopardy. If you win, you lose. If you lose, you lose. It's pure insanity. I'm just about done. I find this topic to be really emotional, and in private, I would say a lot more things with a lot more aggression, but I can't do that. So I'm going to close by saying this, sort of. When you strip away all the legal language, the courtroom rituals, and the political talking points, the reality is painfully simple. Family can be attacked in their own home. The homeowner can defend the people they love. Maybe it's a father and a son. Maybe it's a father and daughter. Maybe not just the dad. Maybe it's single parent home. Maybe mom's defending everyone. But the homeowner attempts to defend the people they care about, and the system still turns its weight against them. Financial charges are potentially will occur, financial collapse, years of uncertainty, a life derailed. Meanwhile, the people who caused the danger and the incursion in the first place may face less disruption than the person who tried to stop them. That's the contradiction, and it's not very difficult to see that. This is the imbalance. This is the insanity. Society that punishes the defender more harshly than the aggressor is a society that's lost the plot. It's lost its direction. And until that changes, every homeowner in this country lives with the same unspoken truth. If the day ever comes and you have to protect your family, the danger doesn't end when the intruders leave or you help them, or you help to end the intrusion by whatever action you have taken. In Canada, the second fight becomes the moment the system walks through your door. That's the reality. And pretending otherwise helps no one. I find it perplexing that the courts have stated the police have, I guess what you would say, common sense and discretion over when to charge. And I'm not sure that I agree with that. I don't know any police officer who is a lawyer. There may be some. I'm sure there are some. And even if there are some police officers who are lawyers and they're not practicing on a regular basis, then perhaps they lose their knowledge edge. And it goes up the ladder. If a constable makes a decision that he or she is not going to lay a charge against a homeowner, and the paperwork and the investigations are done, and this goes up to a sergeant or a detective or detective sergeant or an inspector, are they going to overturn what the constable has determined to be a reasonable course of action? So it doesn't just, this discretion and capability to make a decision doesn't just lie with the constable. It goes up the chain, and it seems to some extent that what happened in Kawartha Lakes, there was some public outcry about the police charging a victim of one of these home invasions, and the police chief, I believe, did the right thing and dropped the charges. But should we be giving that sort of discretionary ability to the police? Should it not be defined in statute? Should it not be clear? And if it was defined in text, in statute, by case law, and written in the Criminal Code of Canada, then everyone knows where they stand. The determination of reasonable self-defense and reasonable is really very interesting, because if you're faced with someone breaking into your home and it's dark, I'm going to make the assumption that in most circumstances you can't see whether they've got a knife or a firearm or a crossbow. You can't see that. And perhaps in all the commotion, and I'm sure it would be a lot of commotion, you have to make a momentary decision of how you're going to respond. Are you going to run? Are you going to, whatever you're going to do, I don't think it's something where there's going to be a long line of discussion. You've got to act and hope that your judgment is reasonable to protect yourself and your family. And I personally believe that discretion is fine. The courts have determined the police have discretionary ability. But I think we need to put that into law. And my understanding is there is talk about bringing law or statute into the criminal code regarding home invasion. And perhaps if this does occur, perhaps there should be a redefinition of what's reasonable and a definition of what's reasonable for police. What is their discretionary power? I do believe that the police act in good faith. I believe their intent is always good, but perhaps pressures from above, perhaps external pressures from wherever, lead to decisions which aren't just. I think something else could occur if the police are going to, under the home invasion, if they're going to charge the homeowner, and the homeowner, let's use some number, 150,000 is required for their own defense, that if they're found non-guilty, then they should be replenished in whole. And perhaps, because the police are publicly funded, perhaps that 150,000 should come from their budget. Put some pressure on them to ensure that they're acting with the best faith possible. And in this world, every institution is looking for more funding. So if there was a stipulation that someone charged and found not guilty, that their legal fees would have to be reimbursed by the police department that laid the charges. It's not a perfect world. We all make mistakes. I believe everybody, without exception, everybody has good intention. Sometimes people just open the wrong door. make a bad decision, and it's tough to step back. But I believe this home invasion situation doesn't require Albert Einstein to sit there and determine what's the right action. I think common sense has to prevail. In any case, thank you. And I know I did not do a good podcast again tonight. This will be number 4. All I can say, with the few listeners I have, I will do my best to do better each time. And I've made a personal goal of doing one a week for 52 weeks. And at the end of that point, if I haven't improved, we'll think about it at that point. But I'm gonna do 52 podcasts, and I promise I'll do my best to do better each time. For any of you out there who've done a podcast, it's not that easy. You have to sit down, and if you work alone or create it alone by yourself, you have to do the research, which is not that difficult, but you still have to do the research. You have to make sure that you're not, being injurious to anyone. You're speaking in general terms. And then you have to set the cameras up and purchase the cameras and so forth and so forth. It's not easy. And I had so many URLs about what various people were saying, and I couldn't get them to load onto the teleprompter. And I was told that without permissions from like CTV or whatever the newscast was, that I couldn't use the video clips, which would have been staggeringly wonderful. But in any case, I did the best I could. I promise I'll do better. And thankfully, which is kind of ironic, I don't think there's 20 people watch this. But in any case, take care. I promise that I'll do better next time. I'll give you this one as a closing picture. Hold on. Here we go. The poor homeowner, he's been fleeced for 150 grand, let's say. He's standing before the court. He got nothing. Look at the poor son of a gun. The judge is tapping on his gavel. You got 2 lawyers, I guess, prosecution and defense, and this poor guy is saying, I got nothing. Well, if that's what home invasion leads to for the homeowner, it's not right. It's just not right. In any case, have a good evening, everyone. I'm done.